in the future. And when I have a voice in the Senate, I'll work to do what I think is best for this area.
I co-sponsored a bill to take it out of partisan hands. The bill would simply do the same thing they do in Iowa. Instead of having a horrible gerrymandered map like they rammed through, which, by the way, will cost the taxpayers hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, with high-priced attorneys doing that map. In Iowa, they have a disinterested third party do it. We could have done that with the Government Accountability Board and saved a lot of money for taxpayers and had a fair map out there. That's why I voted against it, and I think the map is shameful and it's costing the taxpayers a lot of money.
I would just say, I would certainly not be opposed to having a disinterested third party draw the maps. The problem is, how do you find that, the nonpartisan board? Any of you that have been following the recall process across the state, not just in this district, know just how nonpartisan the Government Accountability Board is. Can you imagine what would it be like if we had that group that had no accountability to the taxpayers redrawing our maps? I don't think it's the right way to go. Not with that group anyway.
Well, that's the first account I heard against the Government Accountability Board. I heard they're slow. These are retired judges.
He's already had his 30 seconds.
And if not, then let's find another disinterested third-party group out there. But your party, once again, is wasting millions of dollars of taxpayers' money on partisan.
Related question, I think Mr. Wirch starts with. How long have you lived in the Kenosha voting district?
All my life.
Who cares?
I moved to Kenosha in 2001. It's funny how that's become such an issue. I've been shocked at just some of the conspiracy theorists that have come out of the woodworks about my background. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about my background and where I grew up. I think it's important to have a diverse background. I'm proud of the fact that I've lived in several areas of the country. I've had the opportunity to live overseas. I think those are all valuable experiences that I'll take to Madison and that will benefit the taxpayers of the 22nd District. More importantly, I think the whole idea that you have to live in Kenosha County your whole life in order to represent this area, that's just that's an old way of thinking. It's not the reality of the world today. People don't graduate from high school anymore. They'll get a job at the local factory and graduate from there 30 years later. Whether that would be a better way to do it or not, I'm not saying. I'm just saying that's just not the reality of life anymore. And so for the left to have vilified me, that the fact that I haven't grown up in Kenosha my whole life, I'm sorry I had to be where my mom was when I was born. I couldn't be when we moved to Kenosha, we fell in love with the area, and I think that it says a lot more about me, the fact that I've chosen to be here. My wife and I have made a conscious decision to raise our children here, and it's not because we didn't have any other options, it's because we love this area, and this is where we want to be.
I've lived here all my life, and I've paid my taxes every year on time. You go over here 7 years, people figure out how to pay their taxes on time.
Wow. And you know how to raise them.
Wow.
Again, I'm more than happy to, it's just an example of the kind of things that they dig out of the mud to try to discredit somebody. The bottom line is I own a business, and when I moved here, I think it was late 2003, I failed to file a sales and use tax form on time. I said I take responsibility for that. I should have filed it on time. The government, the Department of Revenue assessed a tax lien on me for $1,875 plus penalties and interest. When I filled out the form, which I did right away, I owed a little under $200 in taxes plus about $80 in penalties and interest. More importantly, I paid my taxes in the beginning. It was cleared up in 2004. I paid it right away. I don't have a big tax problem.
You're on time.
Oh, why don't you do that?
You've been very generous with Mr. Wirch.
Yeah.
Well, you can finish up your sentence, you're out of time.
But, it's been an issue that's been taken care of, and if I get another flyer that says I have a big tax problem, it's just going to other 10 or 15 that have gone out there saying I have a big tax problem.
Is government employee collective bargaining a right or privilege? Does collective bargaining make Wisconsin attractive to businesses considering relocation, I think? Yeah, I think so.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Sure. Is government employee collective bargaining a right or a privilege? Does collective bargaining make Wisconsin attractive to businesses considering relocation?
Okay. Well, I mean, just generally on collective bargaining, I think collective bargaining in the public sector is a privilege, and it was enacted by the Senate in 1957, by the legislature in 1957. Collective bargaining in the public sector, in my opinion, doesn't work. And I'll explain why it doesn't work. In the private, there's a complete difference between the private sector unions and the public sector unions. In the private sector, you've got labor on one side of the negotiating table against management on the other side of the negotiating table. You've got a fair negotiation. They need to come to an agreement that's mutually beneficial for them, where the company is going to go out of business. In the public sector, you've got labor on one side of the negotiating table, negotiating against people that they helped elect on the other side of the negotiating table. And the people that they've helped elect have a vested interest in keeping the unions happy so that they'll keep helping them get reelected every year. And that's the problem. And that's why this collective bargaining privileges needed to be fixed, because what had happened over years is that the benefits and the amount that we were paying for pension and health care in the public sector completely outstripped what was happening in the private sector, and it wasn't sustainable. Now, we could have just taken the concessions, but that didn't fix the root problem. If we would have just taken the concessions and had public sector employees start paying more, in 3 or 4 years we probably would have been right back to where we are because of the same root problem. So, again, it comes down to a fundamental, can we afford it? And the problem is that the status quo just wasn't sustainable. We can't just keep raising taxes so that public sector employees have benefits that are completely outsized compared to the private sector.
Catholic Church, if you read the papal encyclicals, say you have a right to form a union. That's the Catholic Church. The United Nations, in their human rights declarations, said workers have a right to form a union. If you look at the Republican Party under Eisenhower, Google it. It's 1956. They say people have the right to form a union. Even their own party said that. Now, when the right-wingers came in, they decided to declare war on unions, and it was unfair because, first of all, compromise is good. Tim Cullen, who served in Tommy Thompson's administration, he said to people, Tommy would have never let this happen. He would have cut a deal. He would have compromised it. But these hardcore right-wingers are out to destroy unions. It's shameful. Absolutely shameful. Now, he's saying, well, the wages and benefits are unsustainable. Really? Yeah. Take a look at our pension system. It's the 5th best in the world. It is, no one has ever criticized it. Don't lump us with Illinois or California. It pays most of it for itself. No, you know, the shameful thing is the unions were on their knees, flying the white flag. They said, okay, Governor, we will pay the health insurance, we will pay the pension, don't destroy our union. They went ahead and did that. Even Republican Dale Schultz.
Okay, you're out of time.
My party is guilty of overreaching.
Well, the good news is that Bob Wirch and I have found something we agree on. I completely agree with everything that he said about the UN and the Catholics and having the right to form a union. And nobody has ever told anybody that they don't have the right to be in a union. That's not what this is about. And to say that is just completely distorting the truth. This is about collective bargaining privileges in the public sector. We still have unions. It doesn't affect the private sector, and no one's ever said it did. And I would argue that the kinds of the amounts we were paying in the public sector was disproportionate to the private sector. You can look at the stats, and it bears that out.
Can I comment?
Yep.
You've got 30 seconds.
Yes. Well, let's take a look at it. You know, everyone wants to demonize teachers. Let's take a look at the prison.
Who does? Who did that?
Let's take a look at the prison.